Batman issue 106, James Tynion the fourth writing and Jorge Jimenez on the art. On the main story, of course, we'll get to the backup separately. So this is returning to Tynion's run, but it is very much a new status quo that's set up where he has got much less money. He's living in a more normal place, slumming it, as one of his neighbors.
He's got an apartment.
Puts it. And before Connor gets into his negativity, because Connor said on Twitter that he wanted to complain about something on like page 2.
Yeah.
I really like this issue. I love a lot of what it's setting up for Gotham wide. So I'm going to let Connor go first because I would rather go on to the positivity after.
That's fair. Mine is actually, it's a very specific complaint because actually I have a lot of good things to say about this book as well. So we'll get into those. But the one thing I absolutely do have a real problem with is some of the lettering. Specifically the lettering to do with the Scarecrow stuff and anyone where it's or Bruce when he's affected by the fear gas. It has a drop shadow effect along with kind of being like a wavy to go, give it this odd feeling. And I get the effect they're going for, but I think it's actually really hard to read. It looks blurry at points. It looks out of focus, and I have to strain to read it, and it is not nice, especially after reading the Scarecrow narration box, which is a very similar font in the Infinite Frontier issue, where it was a very similar font, but it was a lot clearer and cleaner for me to read.
Okay, so I'm going to agree, but when I read it physically, it was fine. I had no problem with it. This must be a problem in digital versus...
So you think it's something about reading it on the screen?
I would...
Maybe.
Very possible. I would... What's funny is that when I was reading this on the tablet, I never had a problem. I would agree it looks kind of blurry and hard to read now that I'm looking at it. Because I'm on the screen, right? Because I've got it on like my monitor next to the Skype window, right? And I would agree that it's a little bit... See, I didn't think this was going to be the complaint. I thought you were going to complain about how it transitions from Bruce's narration into Scarecrow's actual dialogue. And I was going to argue with you and say it was amazing. Well, not amazing, but like say that I thought it was a really good technique of showing how Scarecrow's in his head and knows what he's thinking. I thought that was a nice little touch, and I thought you were going to complain about that. This is kind of fair. I don't think it's a big deal, but
I think it's a big deal in the sense that it's actually not as big a deal in this issue as I thought it was going to be when I tweeted that, because this, I tweeted that before I got out of this opening section where it was, this font for 3 pages.
Oh, Conroe jumping the gun. What a surprise.
No, but here's the thing. I stand by the complaint as a concern going forward because this is going to be a thing over the entirety of the arc because they're not going to change this. And now I'm dreading getting to Scarecrow stuff in this arc because I'm terrified of having to read this font over and over.
It was fine on my tablet, so I'm not that worried.
Even with the art on the tablet, the art's even blurry, almost like a dreamlike haze.
Do you know what I get from that? I mean, I will say it's having an effect that I think is doing its job well, even if it is a little harder to read. And the sound effect I'm hearing on his voice, it sounds kind of like... I hate to bring up Star Wars, but I'm getting not quite Darth Vader, but I'm getting like coming through a breather, kind of distorted.
Yeah,
that's what I'm getting from it.
Yeah, like a scuba.
Yeah. So
and this thing, I like the effect. I get what it's going for. I just think it's a chore to actually read, and that is not good for sure. Which was why I did think this was a reasonably fair complaint, as opposed to some of my other.
No. So I had no idea what you were gonna say, right? And then when you started talking about it, I was like, it can't be that bad. So I pull up a page on the tablet, and I see it, and I'm like, oh, okay, I get what he's saying here.
Yeah, honestly, I mean, I didn't have a big problem. Again, I think it was fine on the tablet. It's only on the monitor screen that I'm at distance that it's feeling a bit iffy.
Yeah. But see, I read this physically, and that's why I didn't think it was a problem. Because physically, you get like a depth to it that makes it like it stands out, but it wasn't blurry,
Yeah, so. This is maybe a slightly mileage may vary depending on how you're reading it, to be honest. But
for sure.
Okay, so minor lettering quibble. Okay. Knock that out. So this is set. This opening couple of pages is set further down the line because Scarecrow has Batman. Seemingly it's going by the narration boxes. It's Batman tied up and the scarecrow gas or whatever it is infecting him because it's like he's trying to like keep onto his own narration, but it's turning into Scarecrow's fonts and it's becoming these fears, these worries. And like I said, that kind of transitions to where Scarecrow then responds to something he's just said in the narration box, which I thought was a nice little trick to show that he's kind of in his head, he knows what he's thinking.
And it's the idea of how much of this is he actually saying out loud without realizing.
Yeah, that too. Yeah, so there's a lot of cool stuff, but it obviously cuts back to what it calls Old Gotham, which I actually kind of like that as well. Gotham. I
actually really like the transition as well because it's it's Bruce talking to himself. Remember how it started? It was on the road. A woman's voice is in your head telling you, and then the next thing is just it's
Oracle,
the speech bubble.
Yeah, it's Oracle speaking to him, which goes into Oracle filling a role and
I'm glad the neon vibes from Future State are carrying over here.
There's some neon. Yep.
I wasn't gonna get this physically, and then I saw the cover. And I realized I like Scarecrow. And I was like, okay, if this arc doesn't go right, I'll make this a digital book.
Matt, here's something to point out: is that now that it's monthly, it may be more consistently Jimenez.
Yeah.
So. And especially as March is busy over on Joker.
Yeah.
Right.
So it'll be March.
Well, my thing is also, as I had said, 105 was gonna be my last physical Batman. Right. So I told my shop. Right. So I told my shop, stop pulling Batman for me.
Did your shop hold it for you anyway?
They did. And so I gotta go. I thought he's like, well, no,
they know
how you are.
They know that he lies.
Yeah. we know how. That's not a lie.
I can't remember. There was
you're lying to yourself.
Shop owners on Twitter this week. I don't know which one it was because I follow a handful. But it was they tweeted saying, "Oh, when regulars come in and say they're not buying comics anymore," and then just with the gif from Hamilton of you'll be back. You'll be back.
It was Higgins.
Was it Higgins? Okay, I couldn't remember. I didn't know if it was Higgins or Big Bang Comics. I couldn't remember which one of them it was.
So I just looked at the cover, and that cover is amazing. And then as I'm reading it, I was like, oh, okay, well, Scarecrow, and then the Jimenez art. I feel like Jimenez here I think this opening page of the Batmobile.
Oh, it's great.
I love the sound effect going on the road next to it, the broom of the engine.
There's really so much atmosphere. There's so much world building in this issue for the various, again, the ensemble cast that is now going to inhabit Batman. And even though we already had it in the Infinite Frontier issue, it just cutting to Oracle at her desk, and she's like snacking on like what ruffles.
They're ruffles.
Ruffles, okay.
Like, yeah, that's what they are. Or, I don't know if you guys, the chips there, if they're called something else.
Yeah, we don't have ruffles, but
not to my knowledge anyway.
No. They're the Ridges type chips.
Oh, the McCoys. Got it.
Sure.
I don't know. They could be frisps.
But just, I took to Twitter earlier the week when I was reading this and was like, I definitely want to talk about Babs transitioning to this role as Oracle, but we already talked about that in Infinite Frontier. So like,
it was there too. So
I will just say again, on lettering quibbles, still not a big fan of this Oracle font with the green on green. Not big on that.
It's very digital.
Yeah, I'm not fussed. But it sets up more stuff here. It sets up this was it the Insanity Collective? Basically, this new group, this villainous group that's emerging, who are like basically against all the insane people.
They're being run by someone calling himself Master Wise, which is spelled WYZE.
So I feel like this is obviously. I mean, I don't expect. I expect them to obviously be a feature in the book, but they feel like they're more going to be like a bunch of C-listers that happen to propel other plot elements forward rather than being the focus. But it's world building.
I do like the idea that almost this cult. They're not really a cult though, because they are like a collective. But they have cult vibes. Is spinning out of Joker War, right? Like Joker War changed Gotham so much that like this group popped up and now they're pulling heists together, and it is like it's
almost a backlash to like Joker inspired so many people to put on clown makeup and be his henchmen that this is like a backlash to anyone who would consider doing that. This is we're a sane kind of criminal kind of thing. And there's some good. One of my favorite things about Oracle as a character in that role is the banter with so there's a running gag here about how Batman's had to take a lot of the fancier stuff out of the car, but he's driving at like 95 miles per hour, but the auto like drive isn't really there, and he was like, okay, I'm going to go and like deal with the villains because some of them are up in like a sort of big giant drone with the stolen loot.
Yeah.
So he's going to grapple up there, and he says, oh, there's no AI, there's just this kind of a remote control. And because she was just sort of saying, try not to crash then, essentially going so fast, he says it to her as he's on his way out the car, saying, hey, you have to drive now. So he's left Oracle in control of the Batmobile remotely, running at ridiculous speeds, which is just funny.
It's a giant RC car.
Yeah.
A lot of fun. Also on this page, we've got the teaser of Miracle. Is it Mary or Molly?
Miracle Mary.
Yeah, who's like the second in command of this group.
Yeah,
right.
Who's the next, Tynan character along the lines of Punchline and Ghostmaker and Clown Hunter.
It's a good tease because she's in silhouette and then it's just a shot of her mouth and the walkie-talkie, and that's it.
Also, this introduces my favorite lettering technique in this issue, and I've been negative on the lettering so far, but I want to give some real praise here. Replacing the generic symbols that we use for swearing with the bats is a touch of inspired genius that I can't believe I've never seen done before.
Well, and they're consistent with what word they're saying, which I'm always a fan
of.
Yeah,
the right amount of letters.
Yeah, advantage is the effing Batman is obviously the line that's been said. Yeah. But that panel of Batman, if you go to the next page, like Batman coming out at the front of the Batmobile with a grapple is just beautiful. It is gorgeous stuff. And at the bottom, of course, Oracle with the reflections on her glasses. Again, there's just like the book is beautiful. But then, of course, Ghostmaker shows up and Oracle complains that she put out the call for his help, 20 minutes ago, and he's late. Which actually, so they both kind of are doing this. Ghostmaker's been told not to kill anyone. There's a gorgeous full page spread of Batman, with two of the various henchmen, grabbed. One of my favorite things, though, and I was actually enjoying the inclusion of Harley and what Tynan was doing with her. But one of my favorite funny pages of this whole issue is there's one page of Harley basically getting to this event after everything's already done, and she's out of breath. She's running across rooftops.
She's running across the roofs. Yeah. That's the bit that gets me.
And she's like, "Wait a minute!" And Matt, your mate's going, by the way. And Harley's just like, "Wait, how am I supposed to get here in time? Like, we don't all have. I mean, are you all millionaires? How do you have so many bikes and cars? Like, how am I meant to get to the?" So
more of the bat swearing.
Yeah, I love the idea that she's trying to be good and be an ally, but she just doesn't know how to get to the locations quick enough. It's really funny to me.
It's just there, her and her. What I'm assuming is a baseball bat on her back.
Yeah,
it may be. It doesn't look big enough to be a mallet.
Could be a mallet.
It could be, but I assume I'd see the mallet sticking out.
Yeah, it's just. Again, it's the ensemble. It's like Harley's been a regular main character in this Bat run. And I appreciate writers who do that and have a set. If you imagine that each run is a TV show, I want to be able to imagine that opening title sequence from the 90s where here's the 7 characters who are basically in every issue or close to. I want that feeling from the characters in a run. And I get that here.
That's fair.
And I think Harley's there, Oracle's there. Obviously this Ghostmaker character's there now. So yeah. And now we have the villainous characters coming in, the mayor and all that kind of stuff. So we go to this Simon Saint again, and he's basically pitching the magistrate to the mayor and why it's a good idea. And they're all very polite to each other in the scene. He has like a hologram of what a peacekeeper would look like.
Yep.
But it says, only 1 to 5 peacekeepers per city.
We had more.
Interesting.
There was like 12 in Gotham, though, right?
Right, and so this is what I like from Tynan, adding a little bit of some social commentary here. In that, this is Simon Saint, who we find out he's from Gotham, and then left, and then he went to Silicon Valley. And if you pay attention to a lot of stuff that's going on, like, you get a lot of this kind of law and order type stuff coming out of there because of they're so far away.
They're running so far ahead of the law.
Right.
They can't legislate fast enough to keep up with what they're innovating.
Right. And then on top of it, so this guy takes that and is like, well, I can fix that problem if you turn the law over to us.
Yeah. And the idea that he promises, 1 to 5, specifically chosen peacekeepers. And the idea that that's how you sell it. You sell it at this manageable level, but we know for a fact it gets...
Right.
Yeah, and there's also the idea, he makes it clear that, the police would still be there to deal with regular crimes, like that's what they were built to do, but supervillains, like, you can't rely on capes for that, so the peacekeepers are there for the supervillains. And just one other detail here, like, just before whatever Matt says, is that I like the idea that it kind of mirrors Bruce Wayne in a weird way, that he was in Gotham and he left and then learned all his skills. So in this case, it was Silicon Valley, but he came back to Gotham with all those skills. So this is how he sort of comes back as a Batman kind of thing.
Right. No, and that's real good. But like, the plan doesn't sound terrible, right? Like Connor says, this is how they sell it.
Yeah.
And you know, you're like,
if we didn't already read Future State, and if we also didn't already know that he was working with Scarecrow, then we might actually think, oh, this might not sound so bad.
Right, and even someone that already knew all this, going like, 1 to 5, they deal with like the Two-Face shenanigans, right? And you leave the police to actually do their job, what they're supposed to do, and it's like, not a bad sell.
Which, by the way, whoever decided to do the out of focus like city behind the silhouette of Scarecrow was a genius. Like, that is gorgeous.
Oh, those 2 panels are spectacular.
And obviously, even the sequencing of going from the window and then going across the street to like him watching from the rooftop, it's beautiful.
It's got a real sense of movement to it.
An atmosphere. I mean, it's got, if the city feels alive because of this out of focus element, I think.
Yeah, I do love that. Neon, all the lights that I don't think we'd really seen in Gotham much before. Future State seems to have carried backwards. They're like, that's the look we're going to use for Gotham going forwards.
And the good news is that Detective is, obviously Mora, who was doing Dark Detective, which was even more neon-y than Future State next Batman was. So
yes,
maybe we have a slightly different look to it than this, but we're definitely getting neon in that book. So
right, and I think that was Belair colored that stuff, right? I don't know if she's coloring Detective, but I hope so.
Yeah, or at the very least set up a style that should be emulated.
The house style for Gotham. Yeah. Not in terms of, we want everything to look like this, but just colors, tone, scheme.
We're going cyberpunk with Gotham.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Versus the old Gothic rundown buildings. It's like the dystopian that's just under the surface, right? That Blade Runner kind of vibe. Which I like.
Yeah. So yeah, we're interested where Bruce is living now, and then the neighbor who just always seems to go out when the press is around so he can complain about Bruce Wayne. Moving in.
Very American thing.
Yeah. And Ghostmaker's there. He wants to spar. Bruce is... He does get up and do it, but he's mostly thinking about his plans.
We're supposed to hate Ghostmaker, right?
Not anymore.
I still do. I don't like his vibe.
No, I get that. I think we're supposed to feel this. He's supposed to have grown on us. That okay, maybe we're supposed to like him after all. He's got the same mindset as Bruce and some of our other heroes.
Right.
Realistically, he's not that far away from a Red Hood.
No, that's what I was going to say. He's got kind of a Jason relationship with them right now.
Yeah, and we all know how long it took me to get over Jason.
Yes, but I think that's... But we're still supposed to like Jason, right? We just don't, collectively.
I think the difference with this, though, is because it's Tynan's own character. I think there's an end point for this character in this run, whatever it may be, that it's going to build to.
Yeah, sure. But I'm just saying,
there's probably
his whole vibe here... Go ahead, Connor.
I think there is a narrative arc in plan, but also I think Tynan really wants to leave a lot of these characters around for the future. So I don't think it's going to be too close.
It may not be death, but I do think he'll have a... there's a purpose that he's heading with the character, for better or worse.
He's learned enough from Bruce now that he doesn't have to be so brutal, and he goes off back,
Basically, what we're saying is this is kind of going to be the same arc that Damian went through in the early Batman and Robin stuff in 52.
Very possibly.
Yeah, but he's an endearing little shit.
I mean, who knows though? Maybe he will ultimately reject the teachings of Bruce, and he'll be outright villainous again by the end. I mean, I don't know. But
he'll be a new outlaw.
But he very much could get killed though. Like, I mean, because he's a new character that Tynan created, he could kill him. I mean, even if he wants to leave a bunch of characters around, he still has Punchline. He still has this new character that he's just Ghost Clown Hunter is still there. Like, there's a bunch of characters that you can leave around and still kill this one.
Yeah, I mean, this new one is going to be his fourth in 25 issues, if that.
Yeah.
And didn't he say he was going to introduce a villain soon?
Mm-hmm.
Was that not a thing? Like a new villain?
Quite possibly.
Maybe is that Simon Saint?
Maybe that's what it meant.
Maybe. Yeah.
But again, I like because we go to the mayor's next. And he's basically saying, yeah, we're never doing this stupid magistrate thing. We don't need them. That's just stupid.
That made me feel great.
Yeah.
You know.
But because, of course, he has no intentions of doing it, the final page, the cliffhanger, is that, whether real or hallucinated or symbolic, there is a scarecrow, not the scarecrow, but there is a scarecrow behind him in his house.
I like to think it's a real one that Scarecrow has put there.
Yes.
Just so that when he turns around and sees it, he'll get the message.
I mean, clearly, it's the whole point is to scare the shit out of him so that he'll want to, put the magistrate program into practice.
When the idea that if he thinks he's personally in a lot of danger, he's more likely to go, okay, well, maybe the city is out of control.
Yeah.
Right.
And again, even that, you could do some political commentary of Simon Saint working with one of the supervillains who he's actively saying, hey, you need us to protect you from said supervillain. There's stuff there, which is neat. Yeah, I loved this issue of Batman, honestly. I thought the world building was great. Even though I'm not in love with Ghostmaker as a character, he's such a part of the whole thing rather than the focus that it didn't even bother me at all. It was gorgeous. I like what they're doing with Scarecrow. I like what they're doing with Simon Saint. I obviously love what they're doing with Oracle. Supporting cast, I'm into it. I mean, we'll rate the book as a whole after the backup, but that's just kind of where I'm wrapping up that.
Which I knew it was there, and so I got to the end of the story, and there were still pages. I was like, wait, what that? And then I was like, oh yeah, there's Robin back up. Yeah, because I got so wrapped up in.
Yeah, that's the two-part Robin back.
This is it's a prologue to, because this is Williamson doing a Damien story, and obviously he's doing the Damien book, which is starting in May. So this is just a tease, essentially, a prologue to that, which is basically Damien comes to see Talia, and takes out a bunch of her henchmen.
I actually really like the opening of this. So she's in Markovia, just for context.
I do love that that's continuing from what Bendis started in Leviathan, that Markovia is this rogue nation,
Yes.
Which is cool.
Hey,
I do like that.
World building continuity is a thing, which is nice.
It is, and I like it.
Well, what I was going to say is I actually really like what the art does here, because they're at the top of some tower, this hotel. There's a helipad on the top, and there's a few henchmen standing around, but it actually does a little circle around them and kind of pulls them off, and then it zooms in essentially for the rest of the panels, but it tracks in for the insert with it through the art as a guide, which is really nice. I
do like Damien showing up in shadows and Talia saying you're just as theatrical as your father, just complaining that you're trying to be like Batman. I also kind of like that Damien says, look, I've given up the bat. I'm back home to you, mother. And she's immediately like, oh, so you failed. You couldn't even become a bat.
Run home to your mum,
yes.
Basically, is what she said.
Yeah, that was a really nice touch. We should mention Glenn Melenkov's on the art, just because I'm on the artist page, or the credits page. And then there's a bunch of assassins show up. The League of Lazarus are here to kill Talia.
Well, they don't say they're here to kill them. They say they're here to test them.
Okay, true. And they've got writing in green all written all over their bodies. So we have League of Assassins, League of Shadows, and now League of Lazarus, just to keep track of all these various leagues.
Too many leagues.
Yes, but they get to fighting, and it ends on a cliffhanger where, because again, this is only 10 pages rather than a full 20-page story. Where one of maybe the leader of this little squad have actually got Talia by the throat, which makes me think that Talia may actually be in on this as a way to test Damien.
Yeah.
Because she's throughout the whole fight, she's saying, "Hey, Damien, kill." But then she gets grabbed at the end, or knife at her throat, and she yells at him, "What are you waiting for? Kill him now, Damien." And he pauses, and then the final panel is just a splash of blood. And we don't know who the splash of blood's coming from. Is it Damien killing the guy? Is it Talia getting killed herself? Is it someone else's blood?
Yeah, I do suspect that you are aroused in this as well. That it is probably the test is: have you really rejected that? Are you willing to kill? Are you willing to be an assassin and take up your mantle?
The panel of her, she had her arm behind her back. I have a bad feeling this dude's about to get split open.
Yes,
there's a very good chance that splash of blood is her slicing something from him.
Probably something very sensitive.
Look, Talia wouldn't be as petty as that. She'd hit the artery in the thigh.
I don't know, man.
I mean, all right. she'd hit that first and then go back.
Yeah, so
She'd worry about her own safety first.
This is a weird Ivan Drago paraphrase, but if the dick is cut, the dick is cut.
Oh dear. Sure.
Do you know what I think I'll say about these backups, to having just gotten one of them this week? Because it's just this one, as far as the books this week go, is that, well, technically, in terms of it being oversized with a backup, I will say that giving this to like a bigger writer, because sometimes the backups can fall victim to being like, you know, an up-and-comer, and they end up being a bit more rougher around the edges.
Fluff pieces.
Yeah. Because this has actually got a direction, because it's leading to an ongoing book, and because it is like someone who's been writing ongoing DC books for a long time, so it doesn't just feel like a throwaway thing. It didn't fill me with the same sense of like, oh, there's like 10 pages of fluff at the end.
It's a weird, like, frustrating element to me, in that, especially after having read it, I can make this statement very confidently.
Mm-hmm.
This is one 20-page issue cut into two to throw in backups. This could have been Robin issue 0.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They'd have to maybe slightly rechange this cliffhanger, but frankly, you could probably just have that as a page turn.
Yeah.
And it would still work.
I mean, that happens for a lot. I mean, a lot of ending cliffhangers could be page turn cliffhangers, really.
Right. Exactly. But this one here, I could really see it. Like, you could just turn to the next page and not even notice. And it frustrates me a little bit that they're, bumping up this and Detective this month with this backup, where this could have just been a Robin issue. Right? You could have just started the Robin issue 0, done a tease issue for that. Like, there's no reason not to, except for the fact that they want to do the backups.
I mean,
well, I think
theoretically these are issue 1s, right? So they would have gotten the issue 1 bump, but they're not, because they're not renumbering.
I think
so. Now they get kind of that bump from throwing a backup in.
Yeah, I think the smart thing here, it's less about adding on the extra $1 so they can charge the extra $1. I mean, it's obviously partly that, but I would say it's more to do with, well, you've read this because you bought Batman, because tons of people buy Batman, right? Mm-hmm. And then maybe you also read Detective, because lots of people still read Detective. That maybe you're more inclined to go try the Robin book out if you like the two backups.
There's that. I think there's the cynical part of me. I do agree with that. That it's maybe easier to sell people on. You've seen the first part of the story already. You don't need to buy Robin 0. I get that approach.
It's a sales pitch, basically.
It is. What I dislike, though, again, is there are sales figures that will back me up on this. There are probably thousands of people that read Batman that don't read Detective Comics. That will now feel forced into buying Detective Comics if they want to read the next part of this story, especially if they're interested in the Robin series.
There are, but Batman is maybe an unfair one because it does sell so much more than everything else. But
it does.
That said, Detective's still quite high up in the DC rankings, so it'd be worse if it was like part 1's in Batman, part 2 is in Suicide Squad.
That would be extra shitty. I agree that it could be a lot worse. But there are still thousands between them. We know that.
We do know that, but maybe even then, that's part of it as well. Is that like, hey, Detective Comics is starting a new run. You've got an incentive to try out the new run as well for that. So it's kind of a double. Like, it does make sense. There's an intelligence at work here.
There's a clear business sense to it that I understand from their perspective. That doesn't mean I necessarily like it as a consumer.
I mean, I'm willing to give them a chance on this and see how it plays. Like, I mean, as far as the backup goes, I think this flowed quite well. I didn't like it as much as the main story by any means, but
it's solid.
I like
the first
this.
half of an issue. Yeah.
Club's art's really good.
I think for all his bad takes on Twitter, he's still a very good artist.
Sure.
I do enjoy, and thankfully they're bad takes in just like, what are you saying, as opposed to
problematic.
What is wrong with you?
Yeah, and so no, I like the art. I was getting like kung fu movie vibes in it, just with the way that it was. Like, Talia does this standing kick that looks physically impossible, right? But it looks so good that you don't care.
But yeah. No, I mean, I enjoyed it well enough. I think this is a nice proof of concept of these backups working. So, yeah. But I'll just to rating the book as a whole, Matt. What are you giving it?
I'm gonna listen. Let's go with a straight 8.
Yeah, Connor.
Just for the sake of breaking it down a little bit, the backup on its own is like a 7, just to for where that dragged things.
Mm-hmm.
The main story, I would have given a 7.5. I am knocking at least half a point off, if not slightly more, for my lettering complaints at the start. That did give me some problems. So overall, I think I'll give it a 7.
I'm giving it a 9. I really like this issue.
There you go.
Obviously, it's the main story mainly, but I think that the backup's a solid backup that still kept my attention, and I was like, oh, hey, I made this main story well enough, you know? It was like a little bonus at the end, but the main story, I love the art, I love the mythology and the character ensemble building, all that
Out of
stuff.
interest, I know you didn't do it on this particular issue, but going forward, do you plan on maybe rating main stories and then the backup?
I mean, I was for me this was probably a 9 and a 7, but I'd still just go with a 9 overall because that was the main feature, you know.
Oh boy.